Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fighter Heart podcast. We're here with Annika. Um, Hello, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for taking the time to come on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, I'm excited to learn more about your story. Obviously, Fighter Heart's about overcoming extreme adversity. So, I'd love for you to just, give us a little bit of your background, like maybe where you're from and whatnot, and then get into your Fighter Heart story, and then wrap it up, get on like a timeline, and bring it back to today.
Sounds good. So I was born May 9th, 1996, 2:10 a.m. I'm just kidding.
Were
That's
you
true
really?
information though.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I grew up, I had two legs when I was born, like most people, and lived a pretty normal life. Had youngest in my family, did ballet growing up, went to school, did all that stuff, and then I went to college right out of high school and got my degree in speech language pathology and realized very quickly that I didn't like college. And so at
You
that
got your
point,
degree and then you realized that
what was that?
you said you got your degree and then you realized you didn't like it.
Yeah, I was in a 400 level audiology class, so a class in my major, and I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And I stood up and I walked out. But then I was like, okay, you're literally one semester away from graduating.
Yeah.
You just gotta deal with it. So I did get my degree, but the spring before I graduated, I had just started talking to a bunch of people, and somebody suggested, hey, why don't you enlist? And I looked him dead in the eyes and like, do I look like somebody who would be in the military? Apparently I did, but um yeah, I started asking questions and I started going to recruiting substations, and I was actually trying to commission into the Air Force because, everybody knows the Air Force is the best branch or
Is that
best quality of life branch, let's say it that way.
from a civilian? I think Marines get the best, most props for out of the military.
Well, the Marines are definitely the coolest. Like, we're the best of the best.
Yeah.
But as for quality of living, the Air
Um,
Force is known as the best branch. Like, they live in dorms, they don't live in barracks. But yeah, I was trying to commission and the Air Force wouldn't open their door because they don't need the numbers. And staff sergeant walks out of the Marine Corps recruiting office, like, what are you doing out here? And I was like, sir, I don't actually know. And he's like, why don't you come in? And I just fell in love with the Marine Corps at that point.
what did
And
they tell you that like? Did they say anything? What was it that made you fall in love with it at that point?
I just felt like it was the first place that I really belonged. Like, that's something that I've struggled with kind of my entire life. I've always kind of been the weird kid and like the drifter kid. I moved a lot growing up. And so I never felt like I belonged in being even just in the recruiting station. I felt like these are my brothers. These people care about me. This is where I belong. This is my new family. And so I graduated with my bachelor's degree on May 12th, 2017, and I left for boot camp on May 15th, the following Monday. And, they're like, hey, you want to go to summer camp? It's like, I've never been to summer camp.
A little different.
So boot camp, Marine Corps boot camp, I'm not going to lie, is actually really fun. Like, yes, it's hard, but the second you realize that it's really just a game and they're going to mess with you no matter what you do or say, like they have assigned time to mess with you and to tell you you're wrong and to scream at you. Like once you realize that, it's honestly just kind of a fun game.
Do they push you around or like it's only verbal?
Yeah, I mean, like it's mostly verbal, but
Get on the ground. I feel like
yeah, it's called incentivized training, ITing, and they'll make you do some crazy things. And there's something called being sugar cookied, where they send you out in the sand pit, and because you're so sweaty and you're like doing all these activities in the sand, you literally just come out just covered in sand, so you're like a sugar cookie.
oh my gosh, that's cool. That's crazy.
Um, but
You don't
yeah,
wear like this is just a weird question, but you can't wear like an Apple Watch. I'm curious like how many calories someone burns going through boot camp in a day.
oh, it's outrageous.
It's
Yeah,
probably
there we're always like run, like you can't just walk from your rack, from your bed to the door. Like you're running at all times.
Yeah. And it's in
You're
a
running
hot
or you're
climate.
marching.
It's in a hot climate usually.
Yes. So at the time, all female Marines went to Parris Island, South Carolina, and I was there from May to August in South Carolina.
It is hard of the summer.
Yeah, so it was a nice little summer camp. But yeah, boot camp was honestly fun. Like you didn't have to think. You just responded. Like you learned what to say and when to say it. You never had to worry about what to wear. You never had to worry about cooking for yourself or checking emails. We didn't have our phones. The only contact you had with the outside world was writing letters. And then like they'd walk you to lunch. They'd walk you to go work out. They'd walk you to go to your lessons. Like
Wow. So you don't
and
really
then
know like any current events while you're in there, like what's going
no,
on.
you are so cut off from the world.
Oh, wow.
But
That's interesting.
again, like it was easy in the sense that like you didn't have to think about anything. You just kind of did as you were told.
Yeah.
Um, but that's actually when my story really begins. So about 5 or 6 weeks into boot camp, I started feeling pain in my foot. And I went to go complain to the drill instructor about it. And she basically told me, and like, love this drill instructor. I don't think bad of her at all. She basically told me that I was being weak and that every Marine experiences pain and that this is normal and go away. Like, stop being dramatic. And Marines love the saying, pain is weakness leaving the body. So I thought, yeah, this is what's going on. Everybody's in pain just like me. And so I kept that mindset. I did finish Marine Corps boot camp. I graduated in August of that year. I went on to Marine combat training, which is about a month where you just do field exercises, like you're doing the patrolling and you're on the rifle range again, and like you're doing kind of simulation stuff. It's again really fun.
I was just gonna
But
ask, is that also fun? Yeah.
yeah, but at that point you're a little bit more of a human. Like I think we were allowed to have our phones on weekends at that point, and you are Marines at that point. You're not recruits anymore, so they treat you a little bit more like humans.
Very cool.
But I finished combat training, and then I was in my schoolhouse learning my job. And my job was computer systems maintenance, so fixing computer systems, laying wires. If somebody says, "Why is my radio working?" I say, "Have you tried turning it on?" Troubleshooting 101. And during the schoolhouse, you're still doing group physical activity. And I was eating Advil like it was candy at that point. And so my instructor told me I had to go to medical because he saw that I was limping all the time. And I was like, pain's weakness leaving the body. He's like, yeah, whatever, go to medical.
Was it getting worse or pretty much just the same?
It was getting way worse. So I went from like, I can deal with this to like, I can kind of deal with this with medicine to like, I'm just taking Advil to hold on every single day. And at that point, it was November 2017. They put me in a walking boot and told me I had a stress fracture. Well, plot twist, it wasn't actually a stress fracture. In hindsight, if you look at my x-ray, they said there is an indeterminate calcification between the second and third metatarsal. Now, these are really big words saying there's a itty bitty white dot between your second and third toe bones. And when my quote unquote stress fracture didn't heal, they did an MRI. And on February 1st, 2018, they said, surprise, you have a tumor. So the tumor I had, it came back inconclusive in all of my biopsies, but it most closely resembled an intramuscular arteriovenous vascular malformation. Again, a lot of really big words, basically saying this is a giant mass in your foot that's being fed by the blood in your body, the veins and the arteries. And from what they could tell, it wasn't going to metastasize. It wasn't going to spread throughout my body, but it was growing so rapidly. It was growing about a centimeter in each direction. And it was within my foot, like actually like engulfing my entire foot. And my foot was just always super swollen. If you look at pictures, I have like no arch left in my foot and it's pretty rough.
And you had just this whole time seeing how swollen it was, you just thought it was like broken or sprained or
Yeah, I just figured, hey, like it's probably a stress fracture. It's probably something that's normal. Because like I know everyone jokes about like, oh, I WebMD'd my symptoms and now I'm dying or whatever.
Yeah,
Like, this was the first time in my life that I didn't even consider the fact that, hey, maybe it is something crazy.
yes.
Because every doctor that I tell this to, still to this day, is like, I've never heard of a tumor in a foot. And I'm like, great. I'm glad
Yeah,
nobody has heard of that.
yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard of it either. And then
Yes.
I guess they showed you the X-ray at first, and it just they were like so confident it was a fracture.
Yeah, well, it's also military medicine, and military medicine kind of gets a rap for not having the best care, not
Well,
having the
because
best doctors.
they think pain's leaving the body, wounds
Yeah,
leaving the body.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Like the big jokes like change your socks, drink some water, take some Motrin, you're healed. And that's from everything from a stress fracture to like you got blown up. It's like, ah, just change your socks, you'll be good.
Rub some dirt on it.
Yeah. So I was in the schoolhouse still at this point, trying to learn my job as a Marine, but I was going back and forth to doctor's visits, doctor's appointments, surgeries, procedures. And eventually they did end up sending me down to the Wounded Warrior Battalion at Camp Pendleton. And man, how far do you want me to get in this story? I can go as deep as you want me to.
I
How
mean,
much
you're
time
on
do
a
we got?
great timeline. You're moving forward, so I'm cool with it. Yeah.
Great. So, pretty much as soon as I got to Camp Pendleton, I had had a surgery a couple weeks prior, and my pain started being, or my foot started being in a ton of pain and red and hot to the touch, which are like the dictionary textbook version of what an infection is. So I show up to the ER and they said, well, you're not running a fever and your white blood count's normal, go home. And I wish I could show you these pictures because these pictures are wild. Like I'll show you, I guess, for anybody that's going to be watching the video and not listening.
Well, you can
But
send them and we can show them like on the screen while you're talking right now.
great. Well, I'm going to show you just for
All right, cool.
shock value. Hold, please. Um,
This is what you're going to show me right now, your foot.
yeah. So
At what point?
this is when, again, I was about 6 weeks post surgery from one of my surgeries trying to remove the tumor from my foot. And I show up at the ER because it's red, hot to the touch, and in a ton of pain. So, can you
Wow.
see that? It's a little
Yeah.
blurry.
Yeah.
So, that
I
was the
would think
first
it's
day.
broken, like that's what I would think.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, that's the first day. And they said, you're not running a fever, your white blood count's normal, go home. The next day, I
Go.
show up again to the ER because my foot looks like this. They said, you're not running a fever, your white blood count's normal, go home. On the third day, I went to the ER because my foot looked like this. Like for people listening, it looks straight like Frankenstein's foot on the right side. And they said, you're not running a fever, your white blood count's normal, go home.
They literally told you the same thing every day.
Every single day. And so I show up to my normal doctor on Monday, because this happened Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I show up on Monday and it's like, hey, so I went to the ER a couple times this weekend. She's like, why? And I showed her and she's like, you are being admitted right now. She's like, I'm calling them right now and you are going to the hospital. Turns out I had staph infection and cellulitis. So staph infection, we all know, is like this skin, flesh-eating bacteria, and cellulitis is an infection of the soft tissue. So I went in, ended up getting a surgery to remove the abscess in my foot and got my first PICC line. A PICC line is a catheter that goes in through your arm all the way to your heart because I'm getting high grade antibiotics every single day to try to deal with this infection.
Was the infection a result of the surgery?
Yes.
Got
Yes. 100%. And like it happens, like it's always a risk of surgery is getting infections. So I end up getting my PICC line removed a couple days early. Don't know why. Don't know why my doctor thought that was a good idea. And so I show back up to the ER because my foot
it.
looked like this.
Jeez.
So 3 more times I got sent away from the ER for an infection, and that one ended up being osteomyelitis, which means the cellulitis hadn't been healed all the way, and so it started spreading to my bones, and my bones were going necrotic in my foot. And at that point, no doctor wanted to touch my foot because it is such a complicated thing. Like the foot is so intricate and there's so many tendons and muscles and nerves, and like one wrong move and it's just all over. And I did ask my doctor at one point, I was like, how many times are we going to do this procedure before there's so much scar tissue, before there's so much nerve damage, before the tumor continues to grow back, because that's what was happening with every surgery, before we amputate anyways. And she said, I give it 5 to 10 years. So I said at 22 years old, cut it off now. I'm like, I'm not dealing with the next 5 to 10 years dealing with something that's inevitable.
Yeah, if it's guaranteed.
Yeah. And so at that point, they're like, no, we're going to try everything else, which I get it. They want to save limbs as they can, but I was just kind of annoyed because I'm like, I don't want it anymore. I don't want to do these surgeries anymore. Like, can we please just skip to
Yeah, like, is that not
the
your
next part?
decision, or I don't
Yeah.
understand, like how they decide, really?
When you're in the military, you don't get a lot of choice because I was still active duty during all of this.
Got it.
And then after many months of asking doctors and many months of researching, I ended up bringing in medical journals that I had highlighted all the people that had chronic pain in their foot and after amputation, how much better they were, and showing these people who had lost their legs and how good their life was now. And like, I don't even remember everything else they did, but my doctor's like, yeah, let's do it. So on April 2nd, 2019, I finally got my leg amputated. And let me tell you, this is the craziest thing I had ever said. And a lot of people are surprised by it, but that was the best day of my life. Which is crazy for people to hear because they're like, how can losing a leg, losing a limb be the best day of your life? But you got to
Like
figure,
reborn,
I was
right?
just in and out of hospitals and like crying to any doctor who would listen. I was in so much pain. And every procedure I did was just going to end in more pain and waiting for another procedure. And this was the first time that there was like hope. There was light at the end of the tunnel.
Like a
And
fresh start.
yeah, exactly. And I am very happy to say that I have had no infections in my amputated side. I've had no like severe complications since my amputation in 2019.
Wow, that's awesome. So
But now we get to current day. So right before I lost my leg, I was in Wounded Warrior Battalion, like I had said, and they actually require you to do a certain amount of sports per week just to kind of get you out of the barracks, get you out of the craziness of dealing with all your medical stuff. And so I started doing sports right before I lost my leg. And after I had lost my leg, I ended up being selected to represent Team Marine Corps in the 2019 DoD Warrior Games at 8 weeks post amputation. And I took home 2 silver medals.
what sports, by the way?
The sports that I medaled in were wheelchair track, but I also did archery, swimming, and wheelchair rugby that year.
Wow, had you had experience with those sports prior?
Not prior to the Wounded Warrior Battalion, but I did play like a couple times here and there at
Yeah.
Wounded Warrior.
Wow,
And
that's very cool.
and I don't know, that just like lit a fire in me. Like I said earlier, I did ballet growing up. My high school that I went to was actually a performing arts high school. We had no sports. We had no PE. Like
But you were
I
competitive within ballet, right?
a
Within
little
dance?
bit, not really. Ballet's
No?
a performing art, so
Oh, okay.
it's just different. But I just fell in love with sports after that. And now I put out an Instagram video the other day. I do 19 different sports regularly. Some people say I do more depending on how we want to classify them. Like if we want to separate shot put and discus separately from field. But I am now in about 2 weeks, I'm headed to Germany to represent Team US at the Invictus Games, which is Prince Harry's version of the DoD Warrior Games. So it's all international. It's going to be in Dusseldorf, Germany this year.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. And my next big goal is I'm going to be moving to Salt Lake City soon so I can start training to represent Team USA in the 2026 Paralympics in downhill skiing.
Wow. And have you been skiing? Like I don't even know how does skiing work? Like how do you do it? Like
So I used to snowboard before I lost my leg. That was one of the few things I had done. And so when I lost my leg, I wanted to snowboard again. And I did join a snowboarding team when I first got out of the Marine Corps, when I first lost my leg. But I've been having some issues with that. And there's some days that like it just really wears on my residual limb, on my stump. So some days I would drive up the mountain. It would be like an hour drive, and then I can only do 3 runs. And it was just super frustrating. So actually, last December, I was at an event, and there's something called 3-tracking, which is where you were upright, but you were on one leg. And you have these like, they're kind of like crutches. They're called outriggers, and they have these tiny plastic skis on the end. And you don't really steer with them. It's kind of just to propel yourself at the base of the mountain since you can't walk, and to do big turns. But somebody's like, why don't you 3-track? And I was like, I thought you could only do that if you were an above knee amputee. And they're like, why? They're like, you're missing a leg. Like, I was like, you know what? Sure. And I just fell in love with it. And on my 7th day on snow on 3-tracking, I hit 56 miles per hour.
yeah,
And
that's
so I have a need for speed. Like I am brand new to the sport, and I'm just so in love with it. And I just want to go fast. And
do
yeah,
you
there's a
have a
team
number
out in
one
Salt Lake
sport?
City at Park City. What was
Oh,
that?
that's so cool. I was gonna say, is that like your number one sport right now? I'm sure they always change.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, skiing is always kind of my number one sport now, but you can't do much in the middle of August.
true.
Um, but for right now, my favorite sport's actually track, and I am on track to set an all-time Invictus record at in the women's 100-meter sprint.
Very cool. Very impressive. Are you just training every day?
No, because I've actually learned the importance of rest, and learning that the day that I'm sitting playing video games on my couch is actually just as important as the day that I'm running at 100% for an hour.
Is it about half and half? Like, what's your regimen kind of or your routine?
Well, since I do so many sports, I try to do a sport a day, and I have at least one day that is just complete rest. But that's really hard for me and my personality, because I'm always on the move. I always want to be doing things, always want to be seeing people. So it's just kind of it. I
Like,
try to
force
do.
yourself to rest, basically.
Yeah, it's honestly the hardest thing, because sometimes I'll be sitting on the couch and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm wasting my entire life. And
Yeah,
I'm like, no, Annika, it is okay to just sit here, relax. Like, you need this for your body just as much as you need to run 2 miles today.
yeah, very good. Did it take time to learn that, or
Yeah, I
not
in
rested
4 years post amputation, I'm still learning that hey, it's okay to take days where I don't put on my leg all day.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, and to bring it back a little bit, right after your surgery, how long after till like you were walking? Like how long did it take?
I was actually fit for my first prosthetic leg at 5 weeks post amputation, which is unheard of. Like, I don't know, actually, I do know why I healed so fast, because I don't know if it's true, everything I did, but I did a lot of research because I was like, I want to heal fast. I want to get up. I want to start walking. I want to start doing things. And everything I read said protein and vitamin C are your two big factors for healing. And I also didn't drink, and I also don't smoke. But like just everything combined, plus doing PT and just kind of keeping my body flowing my blood flowing and everything. Um, yeah, I healed so fast.
Wow.
Literally, everybody is like, how the heck did you heal from an amputation after 5 weeks? When like you think about a normal ankle surgery is 6 to 8 weeks
6 weeks. Yeah.
recovery. And like I was walking at 5 weeks.
Wow. That is
So
yeah.
again, it was the best thing I could have done. Like sometimes people love to ask me like, do you regret cutting it off? Do you regret joining the military, whatever else? And it's like, well, I don't regret cutting off the leg that I had. Like if we're talking about my life when I was 16 and I was doing ballet every day and I was doing that, and then I decided to cut off my leg, yeah, I would miss that. But all of the for lack of a better term, bullshit that I had to put up with while dealing with trying to save my foot and all the pain and all the just the mental health issues that I was dealing with. I don't miss that. So I don't regret for a second cutting off my leg.
Very good. So like to bring it now, what do you, so you, I guess you kind of told us what you're working on. So you're basically training or for your to go to Utah Salt Lake.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to think of some more more in-depth questions like um when you after you got your surgery, like I know you have to like get a new prosthetic, right? Over and
Mhm.
over. Like you don't just have the same prosthetic forever,
Correct.
right? How often does it switch?
Um, the
How
first the
because it
first
shrinks,
year,
right?
yeah. So you have something called a liner. A liner is the little gray sock that you wear that attaches your leg to your prosthetic leg. My original liner, I remember, was size 32, and that's just the centimeter circumference of your stump, I think, at the widest point. And now I'm down to a 23. So my residual limb has shrunk like 10 centimeters.
How is it? Will it just keep shrinking every year, basically?
It pretty much stabilizes after the first year. They say after about the third year, it's pretty much the size it's going to be. But you also got to figure things like weight gain, things like hormones, things like even drinking a beer or eating salty food. Like all these things can make your leg shrink and swell. And so there are methods you can take to deal with that. Like there's something called socks where it's basically a cotton sock that you put over your stump to take up the space as your body shrinks or swells.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah, so but the first year, I'd say actually the first like 6 months, I was probably getting a new leg every like 2 to 3 weeks. So at that point, you don't get the pretty carbon fiber design, whatever kind of legs. You get what's called a check socket, which is just plastic. So they're way cheaper, they're way easier to mold, and you wear it until like you start wearing too many socks. Like I think my one of the most ply socks I was ever in was like 11 ply. And at that point, your prosthetic leg is just not comfortable because it's not shaped to you anymore. So then we would go in, we'd get a new check socket. And it wasn't until I think about 6 months is when I got my first finalized check or my finalized prosthetic leg. And then you can bring in a fabric if you want it to be a design at all. All of my legs have sparkles in it because, I want to show off my leg and I'm a girl. So I just want it to be sparkly.
Makes sense. Why not? Or
Yeah.
I would be looking up like are there like crazy technologies like coming out with prosthetics? I'm sure there's new tech coming out, right? Like you mentioned
Yeah. I
fiber,
mean, they're
like
always doing research. I have done a couple studies for like the bionic ankles and the ankles that like move with you. But the problem with those right now is they are so heavy and so
uh,
bulky. And for the activities I want to do, like they just don't really work.
yeah.
Right now, from what I was told when I did the study about 3 years ago, which things could change by since then, but they're really good for people who are really looking to just like walk around the house or maybe take like a quick like 5-10 minute walk to the park. Like
Yeah,
they're not
they're not
really
competing.
good. Yeah, not good for like crazy activities. But the coolest foot I have is actually a snowboarding foot. It's made by Biodapt. It's called the VF2, and it has a Fox bike shock in the middle of it.
What is
And
that?
so,
Sorry, a shot like a shock on a bicycle, like
yeah,
suspension. Oh wow.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I can go grab it. Hold on. Hold,
Yeah,
please.
obviously, yeah, that's awesome. Some Concord grapes.
All right, I am back. So this foot
Wow.
Just looks crazy. So it has this shock in the middle of it, and I can't actually compress it with my hands, but when my leg is attached to it, you can bend into it. And the purpose for it, I know people, I got it originally for snowboarding, but you can also use it for mountain biking, weightlifting, and I also use it for surfing and wake surfing. Because the problem is, typically, since I don't have a real ankle, when you bend into the toe, your heel would come up, and then
Oh,
you lose control of your board or lose control of whatever you're doing. But with this, it compresses down into the toe and the heel stays on the ground. So you have a better traction on your board. So, like I said, I mostly actually use it for wake surfing right now. And it's super rad for wake surfing.
wake surfing and surfing, are they, what's the difference? I'm not sure what a wake is, I guess.
Oh, so a wake surf, that's when you're on the back of a boat. It's typically on a lake, and the boat is creating the wake. So you surf close to the boat. So you start holding onto the rope, but then you can throw it because you're riding the wave. Whereas surfing is like ocean surfing.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to like wait and pop up,
That,
which is very difficult to do, but I'm still learning.
yeah, that's even that. I don't know if you could use that. Would you use the same foot for it?
Yeah, I actually on my last surf event, I tried using it and it makes such a difference.
Wow,
Like
cool.
it's a little bit heavier of a foot and it's a very expensive foot, so I don't want to lose it obviously, but I was like, I've never lost my other legs in the water, so I'm sure it'll probably be fine.
Yeah, how does it attach? How does it stay on?
So this is my prosthetic leg. I have something on it, not everybody does. It's called a coupling system. So this pin right here, I can untwist. It's really tight right now. I untwist this pin, and then that allows me to switch out feet and legs super easy, which is really great. And then you just put the pin back in and twist in, and now it's attached.
So
Uh,
how does it stay attached to your leg though?
oh, so
And
I
not
have what's called a liner. So this
uh
liner, it's like a tubular gray sock and it has silicone on the inside. And so I have my real limb, I put it on and it's a snug fit. And
yeah.
then this system, I actually just did a YouTube video about this yesterday, has a pin lock system. So on the inside of my leg, there is, where's a pin
Okay,
there?
there. That's
Yeah. So if you hear, if you can listen, hold on, we'll put the microphone close to my leg. So I just click down into it, and that allows me to stay attached. And now my leg's not going anywhere.
yeah. I guess hypothetically it could slip off, but it'd be a
Yeah. And
lot of, I don't know how. Yeah.
if you sweat a lot, it can come off.
So in the
Or if,
water, yeah.
yeah, or if you're in the water and water gets underneath it. But there's a lot of precautions to take to keep your leg from coming off, but it's
Okay.
always a possibility.
Yeah. Oh wow. So what is some advice you would give? Say someone was in your position you were in a few years ago. Would you just give the same advice? I guess you would, right? You can't really.
Yeah, I mean, I not gonna lie, tell anybody who's considering amputation, just cut it off. Because I don't know a single limb salvage story that's successful. It's
Mm,
just a matter of how long they waited before they cut it off. But everybody I know is like, I wish I would have done it sooner. So, like, obviously, take your time and make sure that this is the right choice for you. But, like, don't be afraid of taking that step because there's such a great amputee community and a disabled community, and there's so many resources and so many role models and so many events, and it's a great community to be a part of. Because like I said, when I was first going into the Marine Corps, I wanted that sense of belonging, and I had it in the Marine Corps until it was taken away from me when I ended up having to be medically retired. But now I'm a part of the disabled community, and I am so proud of that. And I just love my friends and peers, and I love teaching people, and I love learning things from other people. So just don't be afraid to take that step, because I get it. It can be scary, but like I said, it was the best day of my life.
So thank you so much. Is there anything you didn't say about your story that you want to say?
Is there anything I want to say? I say just go out and try new stuff, like go try new sports, because you don't have to be good at everything. Like I'm not good at all the sports I do, but I do them anyways because I enjoy them. And I think as adults, we have a hard time trying out new things because we're so afraid of like, oh, I'm going to be bad. I'm going to be embarrassing. Like nobody's going to want to play with me. It's like everybody starts somewhere. And quite frankly, not everybody's going to be a gold medalist. Not everybody's going to go to the Paralympics. Like just go out and play and enjoy yourself.
That's what life's about, right?
Yep.
Annika, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for your time.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to another Fighter Heart podcast. We will see you soon.